Why would you go to medical school, train as a GP, and now just deal with financial issues?
That's a fair question. I think my parents might want to ask the same question. So basically, I got into finance before I got into medicine. So basically, at the beginning, around when I was 17, 18, got really quite interested in Rich Dad Poor Dad, Richest Man in Babylon. I haven't come from a wealthy background or anything like that, but I started trying to figure out these things for myself. And that introduced me to a new world. So I started investing at 19. So even back in med school, I was already teaching seminars, teaching my consultants how to invest. So medicine, I really love as a vocation, but finance is something I've been doing and blogging about forever. But the main why here is that doctors and healthcare professionals, as I've dealt with thousands of them now, often have no idea what's happening with their finances, really have no time or no interest to look at it, and often end up with really costly financial mistakes that could actually mean the difference between retiring 10 years earlier or 10 years later. Might just be sort of having the right information. Invest in your financial education. So the same way you invested in going to med school and become a doctor, invested in being a GP, you need a system to improve your financial IQ. You've obviously had to learn a few things. You learn about mortgage, you learn about all this kind of stuff. But having a system that ensures that is investing in your financial education. And there are three ways I recommend that doctors can invest in their financial education. One is just
Hey guys, you're welcome to today's episode of Maverick Med Podcast. And as always, I go searching for the best people to come and give us some real good, practical, relatable information. Not just for international medical graduate, but for you, anyone out there, this is a good educative program for you to tune in. And today I have, drum roll, Dr. Ndubuisi Egwim. Hello, Ndi. Or should I call
Hi.
you Andy rather?
Well, Andy, thank you for having me, Hannah. It's a delight to be here.
The pleasure is
I
all
already feel like I'm
mine.
having fun already.
So tell me, who are you?
Dr. Andy Egwim. It started originally as Ndubuisi is my first name, but Andy for short, as Nigerians will always do. But it's evolved over the last 10 years in UK to Andy. So I'm the founder of MoneyWiseDoctor.com, which is a platform that helps doctors and healthcare professionals make smarter financial decisions. Also, the doctor is a real doctor, not like Dr. Dre. So I actually went to med school. I train as a GP, which I still retain my license as a GP, but my day job is now mostly.
Thank you for that. Why do you do this? Why would you go to medical school, train as a GP, and now just deal with financial issues? Why?
That's a fair question. I think my parents might want to ask the same question. So basically, I got into finance before I got into medicine. So basically, at the beginning, around when I was 17, 18, got really quite interested in Rich Dad Poor Dad, Richest Man in Babylon. I haven't come from a wealthy background or anything like that, but I started trying to figure out these things for myself. And that introduced me to a new world. So I started investing at 19. So even back in med school, I was already teaching seminars, teaching my consultants how to invest. So medicine, I really love as a vocation, but finance is something I've been doing and blogging about forever. But the main why here is that doctors and healthcare professionals, as I've dealt with thousands of them now, often have no idea what's happening with their finances, really have no time or no interest to look at it, and often end up with really costly financial mistakes that could actually mean the difference between retiring 10 years earlier or 10 years later. Might just be sort of having the right information. So I get a kick out of doing it, but how it ended up as Money Wise Doctor is my wife. I blame her for everything.
Tell me more. What did she do this time?
Well, she just got fed up of hearing me talk to people over the phone. People, doctors calling me to say, what do I do with my taxes? How do I start investing? What about an ISA account? I was spending a lot of time on the phone explaining these things to people. So she said, why don't you just publish it as a blog and anyone can read it? So next time someone asks me a question, I do a blog about it and then I refer people to it. So I started out in 2023 and that's sort of like ballooned from a blog to a newsletter which I was sending weekly. But then one of the consultants, who is a psychiatrist, kept asking me, why don't you do a video? Why don't you do a podcast so we can listen to it on the way to work? So I launched the podcast and so I started on YouTube and before we did the first video, we got like 50 subscribers waiting. So within the first 6 weeks, I think that was the first 4 weeks. We got 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which was helped by the fact that I had a newsletter, so I informed them about the podcast. So I thought maybe there's something in this, but I hate being in front of cameras. I
Do
don't.
you hate being in front of the camera? Because I've probably seen you every time, you're in front of the
That's
camera.
that's my alter ego. That's not me. Yeah. So basically, I started set up phone different things. No special setup. Did the first one. The video is still there. It's horrible. It's embarrassing, but lots of people watched it. They seem to think it was valuable. And I've just released one every week since then, including a newsletter. And from that, it evolved to me being on podcasts, being invited to speak in conferences, and producing a lot of guides as well. I think we've done like 15 different step-by-step guides for doctors on financial issues.
Brilliant. And you are here now.
I'm here.
So take me back. How old were you when you first entered medical school? Now I'm being nosy.
Yeah. Okay. I think possibly might have gone to med school at the same time, but I don't know. I got into med school 2004. So I went to University of Nigeria. So I was there from 2004 to 2000.
Is it Nsukka?
Yeah.
So you went in then?
Exactly.
Ooh,
You know it.
Right.
So that's a premier university in Nigeria. So
they say.
Maybe Africa. Yeah, so.
Don't try it. Don't go there.
Well, so I did my 6 years med school there.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was med school, it was a lot of fun. I started actually my first business on campus. So my first business, basically, I had a few of them. One was a software as a service, instant web SMS. While on campus, basically, I just needed to raise funds. I did a few things. I spoke in seminars and people say, "Oh, I really love your seat. Where are you getting it from? You must have a lot of money to buy designers." I'm like, no, this is not designers. I've got tailors. So I started a new business that supplied suits and shirts and stuff like that. So
you've always been entrepreneurial.
Yeah, right from like school, university days.
Right.
But something happened. By the time you finish your med school, you get into your housemanship. At that point, medicine is now all or nothing. It consumes you as a whole. And then you go off to do 1 year paramilitary service, national service, which I did in a place where I was the only doctor in the local government, sort of like county. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. But I just carried that entrepreneurial streak around as I was going. So I was able to get to that point where I left clinical medicine for 4 whole years, just to focus on projects.
You don't say. You left medicine for 4 years.
Yeah, 2013 to 2017.
And what were you doing then?
Right. So one of the things I did was I was sort of like, I had a few businesses by the side. One of them was a farm, a fish farm. I haven't had a Maverick podcast.
You're on now.
I also did some projects with an NGO. So there was an NGO called FHI 360. So FHI 360 was a USAID funded project that worked in Nigeria for HIV, TB, and all that stuff. So I actually used that to keep up my clinical acumen and knowledge because I was training doctors and healthcare professionals on HIV and TB in the field. But then I left that in 2015 to come to the UK because I was fortunate to land a scholarship called Developing Solutions Scholarship. So it's developing solutions for developing leaders from developing countries. So it's a very long name. So I just say developing solutions. That's how I ended up in.
And who funded that?
University of Nottingham. And I'm grateful to them. Yeah, so I ended up in Nottingham and I was there for a year. And somehow I was supposed to go back, but I had everyone saying, "Why are you coming back? You've got a GMC license. Why don't you go back to clinical practice?" And I never knew I was going to come back. But now I love it.
So how was your experience combining doing a master's program and studying for your PLAB? Did you have a lot of friends to support? How was your experience?
It's only an IMG who's been through the process that would understand and ask that question. So I've been on maybe almost 20 podcasts. This is the first time someone has asked me that because that means you understand the journey. It was horrendous.
I bet it was.
It's not like I had a choice, right? Because basically I was doing the master's. I had a choice, obviously, but it was like, oh yeah, if you finish your master's and you haven't got anything else to do, obviously automatically you leave the country.
At that time, had they scrapped the 2 years post? I think they had, yes. So you had only, and I think they'll give you 3 months after. to live. That 4 months, yes.
You have your facts in place, Hannah.
Because I've been there,
You've
so
been
I
there.
know.
You've been there. You know exactly. No, nowadays people have 2 years post study and
Yes.
they waste it. Back then you had like 4 months, and if you started making your plans at the end of the 4 months,
So that's you done for.
you were
You're
cooked.
not part.
You were cooked.
By the second month into your stay, you should know what you're doing at the end.
Absolutely. Is that the same thing you did? Did you do your plan? Well, okay,
I
yeah.
did.
So you know the
I did my
formula.
flaps in my master's.
It's not easy to juggle health economics in the morning, trying to work out ISA, and public health stuff, and advanced statistics, and then the weekend you're traveling to London to go and practice for PLAB, and also obviously it comes with an expense. PLAB is a few £1,000s you spend then on PLAB 2, PLAB 1, and the whole process. And for someone who wasn't sure they were going to go back to clinical practice, I questioned while I was spending my time doing that rather than going for my PhD, which there was an offer on ground, the Vice Chancellor's scholarship. But I just had this boss back in Nigeria who I worked with, who was now with WHO, kept saying he wanted to write PLAB. I'm like, what?
You're a WHO boss and you want to write PLAB? What am I missing?
He hadn't been practicing medicine for 15 years. And when I said to him that, look, I've done PLAB, by then I'd done PLAB and I got the license, but even up till a few weeks before I took up my first NHS job, I was still waiting for a final letter to start working in a healthcare consultancy in Africa. So I was still planning to leave. But he just kept saying to me, what are you doing? I'm writing PLAB, so what are you doing? Because I didn't...
Thank God for him and being
very grateful.
honest, because India, I'm doing a current research paper on professional generosity in medicine. And we realized that in as much as we are kind to our patients and we are compassionate, sometimes amongst ourselves, we tend to gatekeep a lot.
That's true. That's true.
So I think it's something that we need to talk about.
But that's what Maverick Med is like, isn't it? You're seeing people to share their experiences in a way that someone else actually benefits. It's also quite similar to what we do in MoneyWise Doctor. We've got like maybe 400 videos now. YouTube informed me that I've just done 400 videos.
Congratulations, guys. I'm going to leave the link for his YouTube below.
Yeah.
And he's very active on LinkedIn as well. So I'll leave his LinkedIn link behind.
Yeah.
You can follow him. I think he has about 7,000 followers on LinkedIn and counting.
Yeah, who's counting anymore? I mean, at the end of the day, is you want to
value.
Yeah, you want to provide that value. Yeah, but it's just over 7K. But what we did is that we thought, okay, this information people pay for, we're just going to bring it out, publish it on the blog. We've got like 100 articles there. We make it a podcast. If someone asks me anything that is complex and I understand it, I might even study a little more. I might get professionals involved. We'll make some piece of content. So I agree with you. Professional kindness. I think I'm very grateful to that my senior colleague who kept insisting.
Who was honest about it, because he could have been flippant and said, well, if you want to come back, yes, you can come back.
I did actually have a job offer to come back.
Well, yeah, and only for you to come back and realize he is leaving. You're like, oh my God, this guy wasn't honest to me. Anyway.
In fact, there was Dr. Abadam. I'm just going to mention his name. I don't know where he is now, but he was
Shout out to Dr. Abadam.
Dr. Abadam. He was already a GP registrar. And when I came to the UK, he was like really doing well. By then, he settled down, bought his house, driving a nice car. And I kept saying I wanted to leave. I wanted to go and start my
Even
business.
after you had your license, had your job.
Yeah. No, this was before the license.
Okay.
So this now was before the license.
So in between your masters, waiting for GMC registration.
Exactly.
Yes, the hiatus.
Before I did my PLAB 1, he was already in the UK. He'd done his masters in Oxford. So he was fortunate to get a master's scholarship in Oxford. And he said to me, Andy, why don't you just write a PLAB? I said, I don't know. I've not been doing clinical. I don't know. It's not. I've been doing things like managing budget, meeting with stakeholders, and running program. He said, okay, let me make you a deal. You go write it, and if you don't pass, I'll refund you 100% of the money you did. Yeah,
it's so generous.
That's professional kindness there for you.
Absolutely. For someone to stick his head out and say, go and write it, and if you don't like it, I'm going to give you your money back.
Exactly.
I mean, what business of it is it? If you don't, you're not his brother, he doesn't get anything.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So
That is professional generosity.
remember this type of stuff. It sort of like drove me to, over the last 10 years, supported quite a few people. I would say I can count 20 people through the whole process of writing plan, moving to the UK, settling down, whether it's in providing advice or loans or stuff to get them to settle
Loans.
in.
Oh, that's extreme. I haven't done loans yet.
I am out of that phase now, Hannah.
Oh, good.
For my
Yeah. Yeah.
first 7 years, I think even before I got when I was still single, I'd known
Mm-hmm.
people like 2 5, 3 5, 4 5, just to get them established. But now I've got a family, right?
Yeah.
I've got
Well,
bills.
apart from that, when it comes to money, I believe that good fences make good neighbors. So when it comes to people that I really like or relationships that I don't want to lose, I only lend money if it's money I don't want back. Because I don't want our relationship to be strained because of money. And I learned this very early. And I'm happy when you talked about the richest man in Babylon.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I pay myself first. And these are principles that I learned just about the same age, Andy. So we seem to have a lot in common in that sense. By 18, 19, I was reading about the richest neighbor next door, the richest man in Babylon, 7 Habits of Influential People, because that was the books that were on my dad's shelf. And because I could see my dad read them all the time, he would pass it on to me. So I got the flavor
what was your
of
dad?
it.
What was he doing?
Oh, so interestingly, my dad was an admin, but he is a learner of life or
Wow.
learner for life.
I love that.
And my mom would teasingly say that every evening for the best part of my life that I've known my dad, he go to the study at 8 p.m. and he would read or write for an hour. And my mom would tease him and say, "We've never seen your candidate's number, but you're always learning."
That's a very powerful model. I'll say, talking about that example, I think my dad was a voracious reader, and that also influenced. He read different things, obviously. He wasn't reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He read history and stuff. But yeah, those books really, really at that early age is very formative. And you know about this loan stuff you mentioned, that's for everyone as well, because eventually one person just didn't pay me back.
Oh, yes, and then sometimes you're reaching out to them to just find out how are you, but they think you're chasing your money. So then they end up not picking the call, and then you're thinking, oh no, I'm not asking for money. I just want to find out if you're okay. So I learned that very early in life. So my siblings, people close by me, they know, no, if I can't give it to you as a gift, I don't have.
We don't do it anymore. We don't do like loan anymore. And it's funny because back in med school, because I started making a bit of money early in med school, I had to learn that if someone wanted 50,000 naira, but you could give them 5,000, you just give them 5,000, forget about it. But when you move to the UK, just realize if someone needed 2,000, they needed 2,000, give them 200. It wasn't going to solve the problem anyway. But I had 90% payback rate, or maybe 95%.
Well, that's good. That's a good statistic. I'm sure most of the banks will be pleased to hear that, because assuming if they had anything like that, gosh, you should teach them your model.
Not anymore. I can't afford it anymore because I've got like more mouths to feed now.
Bless you, right. So we have done an extensive conversation about your professional generosity, and you did mention about the doctor who supported you whilst you are in the hiatus. So what happened? You did stay, clearly.
Yeah, I'm here, aren't I? Until I did the PLAB, what happened that I did PLAB 1, I did PLAB 2, I was fortunate to pass.
On first attempt, hooray!
While I was doing my GMC registration, I got this job, obviously, to go and work in an organization called Health Service Delivery Foundation, HSDF, in Nigeria, but it took them almost 2 months to process my starting day and all of that. In between, I thought, what am I doing? My visa is still remaining a few months here. I went to apply for an NHS job. I got offered the job the same day. In fact, I was on the bus back home from Nottingham to Mansfield, and I got a text message to say congrats. And the next day, I had the letter in my inbox. So I stayed back.
I spoke, sorry to cut you in, I spoke to someone was on the podcast yesterday, and she had come in around 2012 from Nigeria as well. And she was talking about the droughts in jobs that was there at that time, and that she had to wait for almost 18 months to hear from them. And I think currently that is the wave that we are in. So I was just telling a few IMGs, I think F2s, they're trying to find jobs and there's none. And they were complaining about, why are they advertising PLAB and making us come when there is no job? And I said, just listen, life goes in cycles. Yeah. We have the boom and it goes in ebbs and it comes down. So just relax. Just keep applying. You won't get it. So if you're listening to us, times change. You know, at one point it was impossible to get into GP training. And then there was this gate that opened and then everybody and their mother was doing GP. And I heard now it's getting difficult now. And I spoke to someone else who said he's doing public health. I said, wow, public health.
It's hard
Because
to,
public health was
terribly difficult.
and no, you know,
Yeah.
you just dream about it. So times do change. So I'm happy that you applied. In what span did you get the job?
You are very, very well informed, obviously. The pendulum swinging back and forth and all that. Most people don't understand the times. I'm a big advocate of investing. It's the same thing from 2008, from 2005, 2004, when I started investing till now. It's 20 years. I've seen the market go up and down and up and down. It's the same thing. You know, there's a point where GPs, if you wanted to train as a GP, you are being feted and you were being offered TRFs. Do you want to move over to
Did
this
you get
place?
some?
Yeah, I did. What do you think?
I got some as well. A clean 20K.
You see? Well, there was the tax on it.
Well, yes,
Don't forget
at my
about
time,
that.
but those who came a year, so we were in 2018, so there was a tax.
Yeah, the same
But
batch.
those who had come just before, they got the clean cash.
Wow.
With nothing.
Wow,
Yes,
that's a
I
lot
remember
of-
a friend of
that's
mine.
a
He's
lot of
moved to
word.
Canada now.
Wow,
He
that's
got
a lot of
he got a
word.
20K with no tax. So I said, "Oh wow, right? I'm going to do GP then."
So what I can hear from you is that the 20K played a massive role in your decision to do GP.
I won't lie about it. The 20K was the deposit for my first house. So that money changed my life.
That is not a bad. At least you can tell exactly what you did with it. Yeah, I live in
Absolutely.
Cornwall. Well, I lived in Cornwall. I did my training in Cornwall. I'm now in Devon. So 20K was quite handy, but it wasn't quite enough for a deposit for a house. I think
Not because you live in Cornwall and
Yeah.
Cornwall houses. I live in Northeast Lincolnshire and houses there aren't as expensive.
you
And it was partly what influenced my decision to move
probably
here
bought a
because of the
mansion.
price of
You
the
probably bought a mansion.
a decent one.
I think Cornwall then. So you picked up 11K because I had income already before that 20K.
I was
So
fish thereabouts, and then I added a bit, not to spread my spreadsheet to the world, but
Let's
yes, I didn't have to add much. All I needed was about 2K just to make a 10% deposit to get a decent house. Yeah.
So if you're listening to it, if you want to do a starter house, you know where to go to. Lincolnshire.
No, we are going to talk about getting into a property, and you are the go-to guy. You are the money guy. You've been doing this for 20 years. I'm a neophyte. I've only been doing this for less than 10 years.
Oh, you've done your bit. You've done your bit. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I've bought and sold a few houses, so I have an idea.
You have an idea
of the terrain.
Yeah.
Yes, but that doesn't make me an expert.
Well, at least it makes you an expert in your experience, in your own life experience.
Absolutely, my lived experience.
Yeah.
Yes. But saying that, I had a very good broker who held my hand through the process, because I bought my house almost just at the cups of staying 2 years in the UK. And at that time, it was unheard of.
Yes.
Because people would say all sorts of things that, oh, you need to have been here for a long time, you need to be a British citizen. And then the guy said, no, Hannah, you can do it. Just get the money. So, yeah, I got the money. And it's something I don't regret doing.
I love hearing that. Basically, when we started our Money Wise Doctor, it was like busting out myths. Because people said, oh, you couldn't buy your first house in the first 2 years. Just like you. I think maybe we should get you on the podcast, actually. Because
I'm happy
you're
to,
speaking our language. Just like you, it was my first year, at the end of my first year of working in the NHS, that I bought my first house. And everyone, or most people said, oh, no, you can't do that. But remember, I had this chap, remember the guy who said, Dr. Badam, write your, if you don't, I knew that he had bought a house. I knew another of my friends, Dr. Anita, I knew that they weren't British citizens, they bought a house. So I had people to model after.
Yeah.
Till now, still hear people saying, oh, but I don't have my ILR yet. Can I buy a house? You know, because basically nobody is actually giving them the information.
Yeah.
So that's why we do all those guides and manuals.
Absolutely. And like Nigerians say, follow person with no road.
I see your pidgin English there is on point.
Yes, I mean, there's no need to grope in the dark, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And that is why I do this podcast, for people to know that, listen, it is possible. It has been done. You don't need to do it again. Just pick up the the wheel and maybe you can add some bells and whistles, but don't start afresh because it's been done already.
Exactly. There's no need to start all over from the beginning when someone has already done it. Yeah, so that was the journey at that point. I think when I was getting into my first job was a trust grade job. Well, that was not my first clinical job. My very first clinical job was I worked in a psych hospital.
Was it like an RMO role?
No, well, it was an RMO role, but it was a contract RMO. This was just before they could end, IRO 35. Previously, most clinicians
so it was a contract. Right, so you started tasting the money really good.
It was good then, but
and then because you're on a student's visa, you didn't have to. My God.
You have the formula. So, but it lasted just 6 weeks, right? Before April 2017, it became quite strict on IRO 35, which was just about the time I was starting my NHS job.
Anyway,
which paid just about 25% of what I was earning in that role. So
let me ask you, how much were you being paid there as an SHO?
I wasn't being paid as an SHO. I was being paid as a limited company. So basically, as a limited company, I was able to charge as a company rather than as an individual. And I had to then pay my taxes, which is basically, I started using a limited company as quickly as I could. So I think it was 2,500 per week. So not for me, for the company.
Yes, but then you add your fuel, your food, your bed and breakfast, your shirts, your pen.
So that was good because when you finish masters, you know how it is. You're sort of like broke. And you spend all your money. So it was a good start. But once I switched and started my NHS job, for that other previous job, I was doing 2-4-7. I was living in the hospital 1 week on, 1 week off. So they paid me for the week on, 2-5. The next week, no pay, but they want me in a different hospital. But I was single. I didn't have anything else I was doing.
Why not? Just maximize it.
Yeah, maximize it for 6 weeks. But when I started my NHS job,
let me ask you this. Do you need an indefinite leave to remain to apply to open a limited liability company?
I do get asked this question every week. At least one person asks me. And my article on limited company is #1 most visited article on my website.
Absolutely.
From my point, I'm not a legal expert, but from my experience, my own experience.
Because you did it.
Yeah, I did it.
And you didn't have an indefinite leave to remain at that time.
I didn't have any issues with it.
And some way, somehow, the police hasn't come for you yet.
The Home Office hasn't come either. So this is a very common question. I had my first limited company while I was still just getting off my tier 4. I had the second one, which sort of like I used it to run a business online while I was still on tier 2. Gainstake, which was my property SPV, I was on tier 2 as well when I got it.
Yeah.
Why? Because my company is an entity on its own. It's a British company. It's not me.
Yeah, different from you.
Exactly. I'm just an officer in the company. So basically, understanding those two things. Obviously, this is not legal or
no. This is no legal advice, and he's not a financial advisor. Yes, you can read it for yourself. But I get sore throats explaining to people. But then I say, anyway, what's my business? Do with this as you please.
Yeah. How do they say?
No, it's different from you. You don't have to, but maybe they need someone like you. You're the pro.
You can take a horse to the stream, right? But you can't force it to drink.
No, because I get surprised how people get so wound up about getting an indefinite leave to remain. So, this thing about you can't work for more than 40 hours. Gosh. And people are like, no, I've worked for 38 hours this week. So I don't. And I said, no, it's an average,
It's counting.
Like every day. I know. You're not that important anyway. So it's like everything, because sometimes we really get riddled by the fear of not getting our papers right because we did something wrong. Well, unfortunately, some people might be unfortunate, but it's not the norm. And HMRC is not coming for you. Nobody hates you.
No, pay your taxes, keep your nose clean. Who cares? They don't have time. I mean, there are some footballers earning 105,000 per week. Maybe they might be more interested in them.
Saying that, we are not saying don't, breach the laws and go against it, really. But please don't let the fear riddle you and get get so much into your head?
I'll give you an example, Hannah. For
Go
instance,
for
when
it.
I was going to buy my first house, there are like banks. We can mention them, right? I don't know if their policies have changed, but there are banks that, including my bank that I've been banking with for 2 years, they said we don't lend money to buy a house for anyone who has been in the UK less than 3
For
years.
less than,
And
yes,
there are
some of the
some
banks did
banks
that
as well
too.
who said you've got to have ILR before they lend. But there are other banks. I mean, it's a whole sea. That's why an independent mortgage advisor was very useful to me. And we tend to advocate go with an independent mortgage advisor because they can search the whole market for you.
Yeah,
So some people might say, "Oh yeah, my bank said no," or they said, "So I guess I have to wait till I get my citizenship." But most times they haven't really actually done the work.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah. I mean, it's like going for a buffet,
Mm.
there's rice, there's chicken, there's I'm vegan. So I know that
Okay.
chicken is not for me, and there's
Yeah.
nothing you would say that would make me go for chicken. So
Yeah.
definitely I'll go for my salad.
Yeah.
So go for what works for you,
There are other
really. So
options.
yeah, there are other options. If you're not getting it, it's because you're not searching hard enough.
Mm.
And that is something that I learned over the past year. And I've been telling my friends and people who are close to me that, listen, we were not brought into this world to come and suffer. So if you're struggling with anything, it's because of something you don't know.
I agree.
So find out what you don't know. So for instance, I am struggling with editing my videos.
All right, let me give you one. You've given me a nice one-liner. If you're struggling, it's because of what you don't know.
Yeah.
One line I'll say is that it's not how but who that you need. Okay, I recently read a book called I've forgotten the name. I think it's the 10x is better than 2x. But it
I've
keeps
read that book.
you read that book, you love it,
I'm
right?
a bibliophile. I read for life.
Yeah, I think we should start a book club. I've got one in Money
We
Wise Doctor
should.
anyway.
Oh yeah, I always have something juicy reading. Currently, I'm reading a book called Wiser, and
Why, sir?
interestingly, the doctor who it's written by a geriatric neuropsychiatrist, and he is investigating whether wisdom is only from God. And apparently,
Okay.
there are things we can do to make ourselves wise. So back to your 10x is better than 2x.
Oh, I love it. I think I did 53 last year, 53 books, but I didn't physically read them. A lot of it was audio.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I used to feel guilty initially about, oh, how would I say I've read a book? But if I'm driving, I'm listening to a podcast, because my husband gets upset with me because in the kitchen, I always have an earphone in. And in a way, I think it avoids fights, because when he's talking, I'm like, huh? Huh? If I didn't hear it, I don't have to react.
You
It's
don't have
okay.
to react. You don't have to hear
Yeah.
any little thing. Yeah. But basically, one of the concepts in that 10x is better than 2x is the idea of is not how, but
It's
who.
who?
So currently, your how is how to edit your
My
podcast. So
videos.
far, I think
Yeah.
you're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're doing a good job. I think you should go and look at my original videos. They're very funny. Yeah. But the question is not how to edit it. Sometimes the question is who can edit it for me. Yeah, sometimes it's again when it comes down to buying your first house and you're thinking, oh, this bank is not accepting me. It's not how can I find the bank that will give me a mortgage. It might be who can help me find a bank. So running businesses, this is one thing I've learned. Now, okay, last couple of months we had a couple of people on board, an operation director, and we have hired a few people as well. So sometimes it's just who can do this better than me, save me time, even cheaper than me. Think about the value of your time, Hannah. You're a GP partner.
Absolutely.
Your time is very expensive. I know because I talk to GP partners and MoneyWise Doctor
No,
all the
please,
time.
please don't let people evaluate me higher than I am.
Nigerians say, bring me down. Stop
Bring me
kind me
down,
up.
please. I agree.
Yeah, so basically, you look at the value of your time. Someone like some of our colleagues, they'll look at the fact that, okay, this is the value of my 1 hour, even if I'm not working all the time, but maybe I could be resting, or I could be spending the time with my family, or chatting to an interesting guest, or reading a book, stuff like that. So you're thinking, why do I want to spend all that time cutting my grass? I don't do that. I never do that. I pay someone to cut it, except it's my hobby, and I derive some spiritual benefit from cutting the grass. So that is who versus how. Yeah, and we keep increasing it as long as my wife is happy. We think, oh, the next thing is to find someone to cook. So we just keep increasing it. Travel agency. No, I don't want to book my flights anymore. I used to do it, but I can get someone to just get all that sorted out for me, and I just need to show up at the airport. So even as much as driving, sometimes, I need to drive to Leeds, come back because I need to speak in a conference. I previously just drive myself, but maybe if you get someone, they bring their car, you park your car at home, they drive it to Leeds, deliver your seminar, they drive you all the way back. While you're there, you could reply to some mails, you could read a book, you could do. So I'm moving into that level of like where I'm thinking who, rather than how. So that's a tip for you
Absolutely.
for video
Yeah.
editing.
Thank you. I needed that. And I think even by doing that, it creates a state of abundance.
Mm,
Because what I've learned over the years is that poverty is not in our account, it's in the mind.
yeah, I agree.
So if you feel, oh my God, how am I going to be affording that? How can I afford that? It's just because you've not allowed your mind to be rich. You've not created that sense of abundance in your head. So you feel, I must do everything myself. Otherwise I will not get money.
You should be
But
able
you'd be
to.
amazed if you let yourself go, how much you bring in. You're saying something.
I think you should be a motivational speaker.
Bring me down. Bring me down. Bring me down. Wow. So we've gone all to bed, but I've thoroughly enjoyed our sketching out. Let's come back. How did you get into GP training in 2018?
Excellent. You're an excellent host. So bring me back to where we're. So while I was getting into my first NHS job, it was a fantastic job. It was clinical fellow respiratory medicine
Gosh.
in Nottingham. It was fantastic. I ended up doing like hematology mostly while I was
What
there.
makes it fantastic? Because respiratory, you're always on your feet.
Yeah, because it was actually just a general medicine job. So it allowed me to quickly learn like the system, learn the ropes. I was doing respiratory medicine. I was also doing hematology. I had this brilliant hematologist called Dr. Morby in Sherwood Forest, who was my supervisor. So I was just like soaking up everything, which was good because before I joined that job, I'd already written my exam to join GP training.
Good, yeah. So you had a foot in, isn't it? I think I had a similar experience as well. And then one of my no, he wasn't a clinical supervisor because I wasn't in training. But
Yeah.
at that time, when it was Thursday afternoons, the trainees would go for teaching, and it would be left with the rest of us on the ward to mop up. And I realized that the trainees had a formula because they knew they'll go for training, they'll do nothing, they'll just hang around. And most of them were Caucasians, and it was the rest of us who were doing the other jobs.
Yeah.
So one of my consultants, bless him, he said, Hannah, there's this CREST program that they are starting.
Yeah.
Would you want to apply for it? So I was like, oh, thank you very much, but I'm already going for GP training in August. He said, oh, wow, that's impressive. I said, yes, thank you. God bless you.
Hannah, it sounds like you're telling my story here.
Really?
Because I did exactly the same thing. So I wrote my, what's it called? That exam you write, MCQ, before you get in.
So which one is the disease? Is it the MRSA that's the disease? So if the disease is MRSA, then it is MSRA.
The exam was MSRA, exactly
That's
right.
it.
So I did that just before I started my NHS job. I hear a lot of people say, oh, you need to work in the NHS before I apply for training. I'm like, well, in the US, you just write your USMLE, you come in and you start. You just need to score well, except you want the system to select whoever is mediocre, but just because they happen to have any advantage. So I did my MSR. I was fortunate to pass. So by the time I was starting my NHS job, I knew I need to learn as much as possible before I started the training.
During our time, we had to go for a face-to-face interview.
I did it.
I did it as well. But later it's changed, and I think it's gone virtual after the COVID.
That's correct.
I think for you to have entered, that means you did your application in 2017. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That is absolutely correct.
I went for my exams in London. I don't remember where, but it was this big building in London. And we're about maybe a little shy of 1,000. And we had to write, was it like a situational judgment assessment?
Is that the face-to-face interview? There's
the face-to-face one.
There's MSRA where you went to do MCQ.
You did that at Pearson View?
Yes, I did mine in London as well.
Right. Well, I did mine at Coventry then because I was in Coventry. So I did mine at Pearson View in Coventry.
Yeah.
And then after that, we had to book for a face-to-face. There were two parts. It was a written part.
Yeah.
And then there was an interview part. How was your experience?
I did my own in Leeds. So I did the written part in Pearson, and then obviously it opens up. You have to book a place, and then
I know. And before you realize it's full. It was so competitive. You had to wake up at dawn, and then refresh.
You're just making some of the memories come back. It's the journey you pass through. And while you're going through, there's a bit of adrenaline pushing you. You're just trying
I
to get
know.
to the next stage. And most people don't know the journey of an IMG. That's why what you're doing is so important. So
Mhm.
even to get the PLAB, I had to sit, copied out my credit card numbers for PLAB 2, pasted them so that once it opens, I could just paste it rather than trying to type my credit card numbers.
The spaces will be gone.
Yeah.
By the time you finish keying in where is 1, where is 2, it's gone.
Exactly. Yeah. So I did my own in Leeds, and by then I really hadn't started working in the NHS, so I was relatively new. So the written bit was easy for me, but the situational judgment was also relatively easy because a lot of it is like more like
Common sense.
you call it common sense now, but I thought it was managerial or
Okay.
it's common
Because
sense.
if you had
It's
coming from
common
that
sense.
view,
It's common
I'll
sense.
tell you what question I got asked. They said that I keep smelling alcohol on the breath of my consultants. What will I do?
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm thinking, how is that my business?
Okay, that's a bit of fun here.
If he smells of alcohol, And I found it really challenging. I'm sure I really flopped on that, but apparently the right answer should have been something like I can ask him whether he's on any medication that is making him smell like that. And if I didn't find it convincing, I could talk to the line manager or talk to another colleague. But I honestly, what I said was that I don't think it's my business. Because I was coming with a Ghanaian mind, how dare you, if your
How
consultant
dare
in Ghana
you?
is smelling of alcohol, you just mind your business.
Yeah. So that's what makes that part a bit difficult. But there was Dr. Manibo, I think. He had e-medicine or e-medic.
Yes,
Yeah.
in Birmingham, he used to do those training
Yeah, I
sessions.
attended that stuff.
That man has saved more lives.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get him on my podcast. So
Yeah.
he had this 1 day stuff, and I was doing this RMO job in Birmingham. Remember the one I was doing 1 week in, 1 week out. Sometimes they'll send me to London, sometimes they'll send me Birmingham.
Yeah.
During that 6 weeks period, and obviously I was a bit flush with cash, so I was able to go for that first day.
You could afford it. I think it was £250 a day or something like that, and that was steep. Was it 400? Yes. I thought, oh my God, that's a lot of money. Okay, anyway, I'm just going to learn it myself.
I was very expensive.
But then that's where the who comes in, isn't it?
Yeah, it was expensive, but I thought like, look, if I did this,
you get your money's worth.
Yeah, if I could get into the training, then it has paid off, hasn't it? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I did that course. I think it helped me a lot as well. Also, it helped me in the future in the NHS. It also helped me when I was thinking, should I stay in medicine? Because I started writing MRCP, and I did psych. I love psych as well. But I remembered him saying, "Oh, orthopedic is it not just bone they are dealing with? Cardiology, they're just dealing with heart, and GP is dealing with everything." He was like, "GP is
Angie,
like."
I didn't even know that we had so much in common. So my idea was get my foot into training, start GP, and then I'll swing back to medicine. I'll tell you what, I wrote MRCP part 1 3 times. I failed at all of it.
It is not an easy exam.
And it's an expensive exam. It's not cheap.
It is.
I think I took it for granted. I just thought, I could lie in my bed and just read, and then I couldn't.
It's very competitive. And I didn't eventually get to PACES because by the time I got into my training, I was thinking, I'm going to do PACES. And then, but my consultant, this is what we'll talk about gatekeeping as well and professional generosity. There was a consultant in acute medicine because while I was doing this job, I rotated from respiratory to hematology to acute medicine. There was this Dr. Mamvure, Farmwell Mamvure. It's nice because now a lot of those guys now follow me on LinkedIn as well.
Right.
Dr. Farmwell, he advised me, he was an acute medicine consultant, very brilliant guy. He always arrive on the ward and say, "Hi, Andy, what's going on? Come, let's do some real medicine." Like
real medicine.
I always had to stay sharp, so I'll be able to look at the patients and discuss the cases. He said to me that at the end of the day, it's all about fulfillment. And I said to him, I got in GP training offer. So it's all about fulfillment. Because once you CCT, you get your ILR. He was from Zimbabwe originally. So at the end of the day, now your lifestyle and fulfillment and what is good for your family. So that if you're a GP and that's where you get it, fine. And if you're a medicine consultant, that's where you get it, fine. And I would say the flexibility from being a GP is part of the reason why You see a lot of GPs being coaches, consultants, podcast hosts, and all of that. So you need that to be able to diffuse some of the pressure of being in a boiler, boiling situation, 10 minutes in, 10 minutes out, 10 minutes in, 10 minutes out. So being able to offer your expertise in other areas. So that was part of the reason I decided, look, when I got an offer to go for GP training, I got my first choice, Cornwall. I just went for it.
And plus, you're getting 20 bucks.
Play the role, okay? But I'm gonna be totally honest. My first three choices were TROS places. So, like,
I think it's a no-brainer.
it's not.
Why wouldn't you choose it?
It's not.
It's free money. Why wouldn't you?
It's not. I had to talk some people into, like, I had someone
Really?
who didn't even consider it. He said, oh, I heard all those TRS places.
It's a trap.
Yeah, that's the worst places. I'm like, Cornwall, it's got nice beaches. And the next place was Durham.
It's a holiday place.
Some people ended up in Durham anyway, so without the TRS. So I know my brother-in-law, I think my wife had to talk to the sister to say, oh, make sure you take that.
You choose somewhere with and I think they've stopped the program now.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not very current with what's happening.
With that. Not at least in my area, they stopped it many years ago because they were surprised with the influx of doctors that were coming.
Suddenly had a lot of eager GP.
And look, that they had me doing free PR because everybody who asked me, I said, why not? Just come,
Lincoln in particular has quite a few.
Yes. It's very cosmopolitan, yes, and very diverse.
I love it.
And it's interesting how much has changed within such a short time because some 5-6 years ago, you'd walk in the corridor of the hospital and it's purely Caucasian, but now it's really diverse. You can meet any and everyone from almost every part of the country.
That is true because I remember in 2017 when I was applying and I had put in Lincoln, Boston, and I was thinking, wow, what am I going to do now? Am I going to go to Boston? Everyone just says if you go there, you can't get Nigerian food. You can't, everyone is just, but that was 2017 and so much has changed since then. And now it's just IMGs, lots of them there.
Yes. Clearly we are doing something right.
Yeah,
by inviting lots of people
to
come over. So yes, we have a wider community.
So that's how I ended up in Cornwall.
Indeed, it sounds like your life has all been check, tick, tick, tick. Have you ever failed at anything before?
Horribly. I feel so much.
Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, where should I start?
Anyone that hurts you the least. Because there's some failures when you start talking about it, tear comes into your eye.
Yeah, I think basically because I've been investing, and part of learning how to invest in it, knowing that sometimes things are not going to work out exactly how you plan it. Obviously, you haven't been investing for 20 years. You're looking at the net results, but there are some investments you make and they didn't quite work out exactly how you wanted it. So these are the areas I would say I look at that were areas of failure for me. But certainly, it hasn't been all tick for me. I might have passed exams, but that doesn't mean that every other area has worked exactly. I'm trying to think of an area. Okay, I think I can share this. I failed at planning to lose 20 kilos.
Well, I've got a hack for that because last year I lost nearly 25 pounds and I'm not someone who is very physically active. So I found
intermittent fasting.
A bit of that.
Yeah, I did that.
And calorie index, just make sure that you constantly have a calorie deficit, and you can do that without calorie counting. So you make sure that you're eating, and if you see the food I eat, Indy, you think you'll serve it to the whole family.
Really?
I eat a lot.
You don't look it. I eat very little.
I eat a lot, but I eat food with very low calorie index. So I would have lots of lettuce, cabbage, carrots, because it's the volume in the calories that makes us gain weight, basically. So if you eat a lot, so you're always full. And if you're full, you don't eat a lot. I mean, you don't eat more because you're full. There's no space. And basically, our stomach stretches by the senses. So it's the fiber and the water and the volume that makes our stomach stretch and gives the satiety. So anybody that I see who says that, oh, I'm trying to lose weight and so I'm cutting back on the amount I'm eating. So I used to eat one big swallow. I'm eating half. I'm just thinking, you won't be full. You just be hungry.
You just be
And because
hungry.
you feel guilty about eating, you eat a bar of chocolate, which has just about the same calories as the eba. So you might as well have eaten one full eba anyway.
You should become a health coach as well.
Andy, bring me down. I told you.
So knowing these things theoretically are useful, and obviously I'll say a year ago, using intermittent fasting dropped quite a bit of weight, but you just get swept up with money wise doctor and all that stuff. You got a new baby, and that's not really an excuse, but those things sort of just take up the position. This is why people have coaches. You don't have a coach because you don't know what to do, because it's not how but who. And that's why I said, if I said to my wife, well, I'm going to hire a fitness coach and I don't want to go to the gym, I want them to come to my house. If they come to my house,
You're a rich man.
no, that's not it. It's results, right? If someone come, if someone will meet you at the gym, you might not go. You might say, "Oh, I was busy. Oh, I was on LinkedIn. Oh, I was talking to Hannah."
But if he turns up at your door, then you have to.
You're not gonna be rude and say, "I have an agreement with you to show up by 7. I can't tell you every day to go away."
No,
And I'm going to say, well, since you're here, we might as well just
we
do
might as
something.
well.
And,
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's just about who, not how. And we're getting to there gradually, but we're not yet quite there. So that I should count it as a failure. What else? We fail every day that we don't even notice. We decide to do like, oh, I want to scale up our subscribers to hit 50K by the end of the year, and we fall short of it. So that would be a failure in itself. But we just think, well, it's about progress rather than hitting targets. We just, as long as we're making some progress, moving in the right direction, that really matters a lot.
I'm with you on that one. I'll ask you, Indy, is there any advice that anybody gave you as a young person that now, going back, you think, no, that wasn't good advice at all?
Where do I start?
You go.
I think the biggest one, it wasn't just an advice that was given, but it was re-echoed in people's life patterns. It's go to school, get a job, and you'll be rich. Is false advice. You go to school, you will be educated. If you get a job, you'll be employed. But it doesn't guarantee that you're going to achieve financial independence or financial freedom, basically. So that I would say was not really good advice. I mean, the go to school part is still good, but just to manage your expectations. That's one thing I can think about clearly. I think a lot of doctors still fall for it, isn't it? There are doctors who think, well, now I'm a doctor and they complain about their income. I'm like, no, you become a doctor. It doesn't make you a business owner or an investor or something. So that's one way I'll think about. Obviously, the second thing would be the advice given to doctors generally about saving money. A lot of people think that by saving, they can save their way to financial freedom. Because some people say, how did you manage to leave your job 3 years ago? I started it many years ago by investing. So lots of people think that, okay, if I can just save some money and I have my NHS pension, then I'm going to be all right. But a lot of times, if you do the maths, as the saying goes, the math is not mathing. If you check it properly, lots of people are not going to be able to live their lifestyle that they want to maintain, especially if they want to retire early. If you want to work till you're 70, okay, fine. But some people want to stop at 50, or some people want to stop at 60, some people even a bit earlier. So not investing and taking the advice of just save money and stick to the NHS pension. I don't think it's great advice. I have nothing against the NHS pension, but I think for many people it's not going to be enough.
I think this is a whole conversation that we should promise to come back for us to delve into it properly. But I'm currently in my mid-30s and my big plan is to retire in the next 10 years. What would you say to me?
Right. In a nutshell, I'll say if you wanted to just follow it, I'll say follow the 10 money wise rules. 10 money wise doctor
And
rules.
what are the 10 money wise doctor rules?
Number one would be you are in charge of your financial future. Basically, you are the chief financial officer. That means you should know what's happening with your money, know what's happening with your pension, know where everything is going. You might hire people, like I have an accountant, you might hire advisors, but you are the one in charge. That's number one. Number two is basically invest in your financial education. So the same way you invested in going to med school and you become a doctor, you invested in being a GP, you need a system to improve your financial IQ. You've obviously had to learn a few things. You learn about the mortgage, you learn about all this kind of stuff. But having a system that ensures that is investing in your financial education. And there are three ways I recommend that doctors can invest in their financial education. One is just to read one book every year. If you read one book every year, one good financial book, you're currently reading a 10x. You've read 10x better than 2x. Okay. Imagine, well, I don't need, I'm preaching to the choir here, but imagine lots of doctors who've been through medical school. They've not read any other books apart from medical books. But if you read one good financial book every year, that would maximize that would improve your financial IQ so much that at least you've got direction. Number two way you can actually invest in your financial education could be something like a seminar, one a year. You don't have to become a junkie, a financial nerd like me. If you attend one seminar or workshop or something, it could be about taxes or investing, they keep you fit. And number three, in investing in your financial education will be follow a blog or podcast or weekly newsletter, something that gives you bite-sized, just like there have been so many changes in taxes recently with the labor coming in and all that. So you just need a 5 minute way to just stay updated. It obviously it helps if it's a blog that is related to what you do. It's a bit self-serving for me, but I would have recommended moneywisedoctor.com.
Of course, why not?
So,
Of course.
but you just need a blog or a podcast that delivers chunky bite size. So that's just number two of the Money-Wise Doctor rules. Do you want to hear the rest of them?
Let's do up to 5.
Let's do up to 5. I think we get to number 5. It summarizes it. Number 3 is to have an emergency fund. So you want to set aside 3 to 6 months worth of your living expense, not invested, not in a random crypto or something your cousin recommended, not in the market. It's just
I'm trying to keep a straight face.
It's your podcast. You can keep whatever face you like. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'll share the link with you. So basically, you want to have an emergency fund even before you start investing because that gives you a bit of financial flexibility. And not everything becomes an emergency. If your boiler gets blown up, it doesn't become a source of stress for you. And of course, number 4 will be set aside 20% of your income for retirement. So that includes both investing, saving, whether you decide to put it in a SIP. Yeah, the 5th one, which is where I think we should stop, unless you want to read up the rest of it. But number 5 is basically you want to make sure that you shield yourself against potential catastrophic financial disaster. So that's where your income protection comes in. That's where your life insurance comes in. I've had a doctor on my podcast who was a radiology consultant. And one day she woke up, she's developed severe eye pain, optic neuritis. She hasn't been practicing radiology now for 4 to 5 years. This happened the Christmas of 2020. Now she's retrained. She's a brilliant health coach. But because she had income protection in place, that was what protected her that period. They had to pay her, and she had emergency fund to fall back. Yeah, so these are sort of like the number 1 to 5 before you delve into the more offensive bits. Not offensive, but like attack. Like, in football, there's offense, there's
defense, and
defense.
then
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking about investing passively, having your financial dream team, like your accountant, your lawyer, and then obviously finally have your legacy in place. Are you making sure that you're not going to leave a lot of money to people who will pay 40% of it to inheritance tax, and making sure that you've got a will and life insurance and all that in place, looking at whether you need to roll it into a trust? So that is, in a nutshell, if a doctor goes through those and tick it off one by one, and you don't have to do it in one day, you can do it in 10 years. That would actually give you a better outcome than just sitting on your hands and waiting for NHS pension.
I can't thank you enough for the wealth of knowledge that you've given me within this past 3 to 5 minutes. But if you could give yourself one piece of advice at the start of your journey here in the UK, what would it have been?
I'll say it's not how, it's who. That's what I'm going to say. If I were to go back even to the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I'm not going to be focusing on just how to do things. Obviously, it's good to learn how to do things. It should be who can help me do this. That's what I'm doing. If I came in and I was brand new IMG, I'll be like, who? And that who might be you, Hannah, or Maverick Med, who is publishing information that I need to learn. or it might be somebody I know who's been in the UK who I can ask questions and all that. The same when it comes to finance. I'm not going to be thinking, how do I save tax? I'm going to find, I want the brilliant, best specialist medical accountant who can help me not to overpay tax. So if I were to go back 10 years, it's almost 10 years now, it's going to be who, not how.
Brilliantly said. And on that note, we would end this episode. Please like, share, follow, share it with somebody, and follow him on Money Wise Doctor, because he is indeed a Money Wise Doctor, like his name succinctly says it, and do follow him. And if you have any questions, I'm sure you can slide into his DM on LinkedIn. Are you on all the other social media platforms?
Yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn. I do a bit on Facebook and the rest of them, but I'm most active on LinkedIn.
Right, so you can find him on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you would not be disappointed. On that note, we round up, and bye for now.
All right, thanks for having me.